Okay, I'm going to do this quickly. I'm going to give you a lecture on how all the participants in Uber are killing Uber. And I'm talking about Uber corporate, Uber customers, and Uber drivers. My background is that I have been earning a living, such as it is, as a taxi driver in El Paso, Texas, for close to 20 years now. And I have seen some of the most despicable human beings ever known to mankind. And I'm not just talking about the taxi drivers. I'm talking about the city representatives, the mayor, the police chief, the police officers, the taxi inspectors. In El Paso, Texas, conducting business apparently is a crime. But I'm not going to complain about the taxi business. But the taxi business, what I've learned in the taxi business, is very helpful in what's going on with Uber as of January 15th, calendar year 2020. Now, in studying psychology, this is the psychology of the customer, psychology of the driver, and the psychology of Uber corporate. Uh, for many, many years, really, Uber just went down the road of greed. It's all about them. Have no respect or understanding of the cost of a vehicle maintenance, what happens to a vehicle, every mile you put on the vehicle. But that's more an issue of the driver than of the corporation, because the driver should be able to see this isn't beneficial to me. I'm not going to do it. I'm killing my vehicle by putting 100+ miles on it a day, some even 200+ miles on it. And that's what you want. If you want to make $100, there's a good chance you're going to have to put 200 miles on your vehicle. And even the best vehicle, and in El Paso, Texas, I see these little Hondas, little Toyotas, the Prius. Those little four-cylinder vehicles cannot take the pounding of the road for 200 miles. You're going to have serious mechanical problems. And that's only an issue if you're not making enough to repair the vehicle when the vehicle needs repairs. As a taxi driver, I know I'm going to run into maintenance issues, and I have to. Part of the business is having the money to make the repairs. Excuse me, I got to drink some water so I don't cough that much. So, Uber, as it was treating the drivers by taking 30%, lowering the cost per mile, don't care about the mindset. The reality is, all that does is make it harder for the driver to make money. And Uber's platform is built on the idea that we want the drivers out when there's high demand. And the way we will get the drivers out when there's high demand, we'll do it with surge pricing. Nothing really wrong with that, because somebody who doesn't want to pay $30 won't use the system, and then the system will be available for X amount of customers. Nothing wrong with that. The problem is when there isn't a lot of demand, the few drivers who are working are getting very little, less than $1 a mile. In the calendar year of 2020, taxis, Ubers, and Lyft, if you're putting 200 miles on your vehicle, you should be getting $1.50 of your money. This is not $1.50 where Uber takes whatever it takes. Watching these YouTube videos, somebody mentioned that they got 40% and Uber got 60%. See, all of that is nothing but greed. And that's the point that I'm coming to. Right now, today, asset exists. My problem with Uber is that it charges so little that it gives the impression that my prices should be as cheap as Uber prices. So corporate greed is easy to understand. Why? What's the justification for Uber corporate to take 30% when their overhead is basically the commercial insurance they say they provide and the computers? If they're involved in other things, that's a choice. Your basic overhead is your computer servers and the commercial insurance you say you provide. People should read the new partnership agreement. It sounds to me like all Uber drivers now are required to carry their own commercial insurance. Interesting. Because the only way you can have commercial insurance is if you are a corporation, if you're a business. Me, I would have no problem because I'm an independent owner of a taxi company, a one-car taxi company. I have my commercial insurance. So let's go down to the psychology of the customer. Let's start with it. No, well, okay, corporate greed. Very poor on corporate Uber's part to think that because they're international, they got millions of drivers, who cares if this small group of drivers aren't, making it. In El Paso, Texas, that's what as a single person, and that's another problem with Uber, the idea that somebody's going to do their 40 hours and then go drive an extra 20 hours. That's a serious psychological burden on any person. Don't care who you are. It will have its psychological tolls. It will have its physical tolls. You're killing yourself. You're harming your heart, not to mention your brain. So, but that's the idea. But corporate greed on that part. Now, the drivers are, you should understand I have no sympathy for people who can read English, could understand the partnership of Uber, and then started crying that Uber wasn't doing it for them. If you have a brain, you read the partnership agreement, you understand the terms of the contract, and you abide by the terms of the contract. Say, and it's a El Paso is an impoverished area. It is my opinion that Uber is taking advantage of all the people who are not making it, who without Uber would have no other way to make money, and is keeping them deliberately poor. You don't want them to go anywhere else. You don't want them to put money in the bank. You don't want them to get a college education. You don't want them to do anything else where they would leave the Uber system. I see this kind of stuff in the African continent, where individuals give small business loans with a 300% interest. And they do it deliberately because it sounds like an opportunity, but they do it deliberately to keep that person poor, tied to the loan and tied to that business 24 hours a day, trying to make up the money to pay back the loan and to live off of. Very poor morals and ethics, in my opinion, of Uber. And the drivers, this is the point that I was going to get to. In El Paso, Texas, because of Uber, a lot of the regulations that we were under, and we were under a horrible system of city employees' arrogance, just doing things that shouldn't be done in the United States of America. I don't care what opinion the mayor, the city representatives, the taxi inspectors, the police officers, and for a big part, I don't care what the customer, the potential customer, thinks. In America, the free person is in charge, not the mayor, not the taxi inspectors. There's a constitution, there's a Bill of Rights that protect individuals. You're innocent until proven guilty, and you have the right to due process, your day in court to face your accuser. Not to be threatened by taxi inspectors who tell you, say or do what I say, or I'll have your license suspended. And it's not any better right now. But Those changes took place in 2016 because of Uber. Because the city couldn't have a standard for taxi drivers, actual taxi drivers, and Ubers. And the only thing that they could do because of Uber's money was take away the restrictions they had on taxi drivers. So the appearance of equal protection under the law of the 14th Amendment was there. But what that did was, and I'm all for drivers charging what they want to charge, taxi drivers in El Paso, Texas. But you gotta understand that the customer will pay what they can pay and what they want to pay. They have run their customers away. The taxi drivers of El Paso, Texas have run their customers away. And in reality, they have run my customers away with their poor business practices. And the reason I'm making this point, because speaking of Uber drivers, if I'm an Uber user and you will not pick me up when I'm only going $3 down the road, why would I use the Uber system when I'm going $30 down the road? You're going to find an alternative. There is an alternative. In America, it's all about competition. Uber's competition is Lyft. If I was going to tell anything to Lyft, is don't do anything. Keep your damn mouth shut. Enjoy the boost in customers that you're going to get, because the psychology in a customer is going to be that Uber is treating me this way, I'm going to go somewhere else. As long as there's an alternative, like the taxi business and like Lyft, that customer is going to go somewhere else. Uber drivers' customers are going to go somewhere else because they're going to hear that Uber drivers will not pick up anybody under $4. And when they hear that is, well, if they're not going to pick me up for $4, then I'm definitely not going to use it when I'm going $20, $40, or $60 down the road. You're upsetting your customer. You are helping your customer adopt a negative attitude towards you. You're under the foolish impression that every $3 customer is always going to be a $3 customer. See, I get full service. As long as the person is willing to meet my prices, I'll take anybody. I don't look at somebody and say, oh, this one I can charge 20, and then look at somebody else and say, oh, that one I can charge 40 to the same place. The only reason as an Uber driver and as a member of Uber corporate that you're eating is because the customer is using the service. That's the only reason. And if you cannot take care of your customer with good customer service, which means you pick up the $2 and the $3 and the $4, because down the road, that same customer may be a $50 customer. See, it's it's a foolish mindset to start saying, I'm not going to take that customer. That customer is not financially to my benefit, or I'm going to charge more. See, one of the things that my customers don't understand is I've been at this for 20 years. They don't know me. They don't know my history. But if I was charging today, January 15, 2020, the prices I was charging 20 years ago, there'd be no reason to be in this industry. I couldn't pay for the car. I couldn't pay for the permits. I couldn't pay for the commercial insurance. I couldn't pay my groceries, my home. So people don't understand that there are actual elements that factor into the price. You know, people would tell me, well, if you people charge less, well, I was here when we were charging 50% less. And we were not making money. I'm the last person you want to tell to charge less. So, but this is a mistake that Uber, corporate Uber, the drivers of Uber, and the customers. So the drivers are wrong with their little attitude against corporate Uber, and they're wrong with their little attitude against the customers. You're going to upset the customers. You're going to put yourself out of business. See, you got to be positive. And positive means full service. Every person that can pay my prices, I'm going to give service to. I get a lot of customers because the other drivers have decided to go crazy and try to get rich off of one customer. And I work the same area. 90% of my customers are repeat customers, regular business, and the other drivers are running them off by, these people have been paying a certain amount for 7 years. A customer has been paying a certain amount for 7 years, and all of a sudden these drivers want to charge them more. And what I'm hearing on YouTube from Uber drivers, you're going to piss off your customer. You're going to upset them, and they're going to stop using Uber. And the alternative is a taxi and Lyft. Now, corporate greed, bad. Driver greed, bad. Customer greed, bad. The customer, I see it. The demand that the customer has for cheap, seriously cheap service. $3, you know, Uber drivers are driving people from the hotel to the Whataburger, waiting 10-15 minutes in the drive-thru line, back to the hotel for less than $3. That's an abuse. And the customer is in the psychology that I better get this service. You better give me this service. I am demanding, and you must meet my demands. That kind of arrogance puts people off. See, both people, all three elements have to play nice. Corporate Uber has to play nice with the drivers, and the drivers have to play nice with corporate Uber, and the customer has to play nice with the drivers and corporate Uber corporate. And what I'm looking at, being an insider in the taxi industry, seeing these taxi drivers go through their foolishness, their stupidity. They don't market themselves. They don't show any respect for their customers. They don't try to find the the price that the customer is willing and can pay. The customer may be able to pay it, but the behavior of the driver is so obnoxious that the customer will not pay it. And Uber's driver's behavior is becoming so obnoxious that many customers are going to say, thank you and goodbye. Don't need you. You're not that great. I just told AT&T, I'm going to give you a little history here, how poor customer service can get. I knew when I got AT&T, home internet and television, that I was doing it for a temporary period because Spectrum cable had become so just so bad, intolerable. Having to call them and tell them your service isn't working, and having to go through all their garbage and their technical support, and we got to send somebody out, and then the person not showing up. They would say between 3 and 5 in the afternoon, and the person would call me at 5:15, 5:20. I'm on my way. Well, 5:20 is not between 3 and 5, and I am a business person. I have responsibilities. I can't be waiting around for a stupid technician that isn't going to show up. So I was going to punish Spectrum, and I knew it was going to be temporary, and I knew AT&T would be just as miserable of a corporation as Spectrum Cable was, and they proved it. So it came to the anniversary year with AT&T. I call them to cancel the television because I was okay with the price they quoted me for the internet. I didn't much care for the television anymore. I'm doing my financial report, my little company's financial report, and I noticed that the AT&T has charged me more than they should have charged. So I call them to ask why, and the reason is because they never canceled the television portion. It was on their computer, but one of the little computer customer service persons took it off, the cancellation order. And I'm okay. Well, now I've made you aware of it. It's on your computer. You can see the date I called to have it canceled. And the question I'm asking is, what's going to happen to the money you overbilled because I had already canceled the television? They send me to another department, and they always do this. It doesn't matter who. When they say, well, we need you to talk to somebody else, they want you to talk to somebody that they call a retention. I'm going to use the title retention officer because that's mostly what they do. Retention manager, doesn't matter. And that person's job is to convince you not to drop services. I already knew this. And the person finally answers the phone. I hate having to explain myself, especially when the first person I spoke to should have been inputting notes that the second person could read into their computer system. And what got me upset with this little customer service human was that I was asking them, which I have a legitimate right to ask, what are you going to do with the money that you overbilled? And his answer every single time was, answer my question and I'll answer yours. As a customer, he should have said, this is the amount we overbilled. I mean, respecting me as a customer, he should have said, this is the amount we overbilled. This is the amount we're going to refund. No. Every time I ask, answer my questions and I'll answer yours. And what the little creep wanted me to do was get more service. Say, now, excuse me. All I was going to do was cancel the television portion. But that little human, what I'm calling a retention officer, pissed me off so much that I canceled the internet portion. If I am a customer, I as a customer have the right to defend my money. And if I call a company and say, hey, you made this error and I want to know what you're going to do with the money you overbilled, I should get an answer. I shouldn't have somebody tell me, answer my question and I'll answer yours. He's literally trying to for me to tell him what other package that AT&T is offering that would make me happy. And all of it ended up at the same place. $75 a month plus federal fees, which I could do better. I already looked into it. Most of us look into things. See, Uber drivers, people have a Lyft app, a Lyft customer app, and an Uber customer app. They open both, and they see who's going to charge them less, and they go with the service that is going to charge them less. Uber drivers, if it is known in the customer pool, that's the pool of the potential customers you could get, if it is known that Uber drivers are no longer picking up anybody $4 and less, that's going to upset them. They're going to develop a negative attitude against you, and they're going to stop using your service. Again, if I, as a customer of Uber, Lyft, taxi, whatever, know that when I'm only going 1.5 miles, I'm going to be denied services. Well, when I'm going 10 miles down the road, I'm not going to use you. I'll find an alternative. So that's what I'm, excuse me, the more I talk. So if Uber corporate was smart, they would develop a system where even in low demand times, the driver is making $1.50 a mile. Their money. That would be $1.50 for them, and then whatever Uber wants to get. Because if you're a driver and you're killing your vehicle, there's no reason to be with Uber. And it's ironic that these companies, these This Google, YouTube, Amazon, eBay have become horrible, greedy corporations. Nothing to do with the customer. They were supposed to be better than oil companies, but they're not. They're even worse. They got you by the nuts, and they know they have you by the nuts. So if I was going to tell Uber corporate anything, is you need to help these drivers at least make what is called a living wage, even if they're part-timers. And that means that on your low end, your low demand, the base price, as far as I'm concerned, in El Paso, Texas, the base price should be $1.50 a mile for the driver. Gas costs money, brakes cost money, tires cost money, transmissions cost money. Uber doesn't take it. I don't think they care if your engine burns. I don't think they care if your transmission burns. I don't think they care if you get into an accident with someone who doesn't have insurance. You're at a high risk if your profession, if your career is driving on the public roads. It's a lot of crazy drivers. So that Uber corporate greed, that's that issue. The driver greed is just one, is being immature and not being able to respect the terms of the contract. Uber didn't hide anything from anybody. You should have read the partner agreement. You should have known exactly what was happening. And you can't cry after the fact. After you sign a contract, you cannot cry after the fact. You should be mature enough to accept the terms in the contract. And the reason I say that is because overall, Uber was a very simple idea. The customer can get service, and the customer doesn't have to worry about what they're going to be charged. Very simple idea. When it all became about 5 stars, and see, another thing for corporate Uber is you never took into account the miserable morality and ethics, poor morality, a majority of human beings in the modern world. And there are people who use that star system to attack people, to attack customers. There are customers who use that star system to attack drivers. A lot of them. I was watching a YouTube video, and there was drivers complaining about how customers fake complaints to get refunds. Yes, that is the miserable modern human being. But it was a very simple idea. You could have tweaked it a little bit. Uber could have made money, drivers could have made money, and customers could have gotten safe, affordable service. But everybody, the customer wants very cheap service. Uber takes advantage of all the Uber registered vehicles out there and lowers the mile based on how many people, how many drivers are on the road. And it's not enough for a driver to pay the basics of using their vehicle in a business venture. So, Uber corporate greed, the greed of the Uber driver, and the greed of the Uber customer. Customer has to pay a reasonable price. I keep telling this to people. I could start a business in El Paso, Texas. The reason I won't is because I'll be buying the item for $1, and the majority of the customers will be thinking they can offer me 25 cents. There's a real cost. And what Uber is charging right now per mile and what the driver is getting is not enough to take on the burden of using a vehicle in a business venture. Your tires are wearing down. Tires are very expensive. On the vehicle that I own right now, the basic is $85 per tire. I have some vehicles that is $60. and the old one is $40. No, $50. New. And the reason you don't buy new tires is because there's a bunch of garbage on the roads, and you're going to get what is called a cut on the side of the tire that cannot be fixed. You pay $100 per tire. You buy $500 worth of tires. You're cruising down the road, and debris, a piece of metal, cuts the side of the tire. There goes your $100 tire. You're better off buying used tires. That way, if you're having to buy 2 or 3 or 4, at least you're not paying more than $30. Because that's one thing. See, after 20 years, that's one thing I know. There's a lot of metal. Nails don't mean a damn thing. I'm using plugs, and anybody who tells you can't use tire plugs is an idiot, because I've been using them for like 7 years now. I don't have to wait for a garage to open. I don't have to pay. Every garage has a different. Some will charge you $6 for a patch. Some will charge you $10 for a patch. I just rip the nail out and ram the plug in and cut off the excess, and I'm good to go. And they're still working. So anybody tells you that plugs are no good, that's an idiot who wants to sell you a patch. So that's my opinion on all of why. And the sad part of it is when I was a young person, you know how you're forced to go to the library to pick books? I got a book, don't know what it was doing, in a grade school, public school library, but it was a book on positive negative systems. And a positive system is a system that feeds itself. A negative system is that stuff is coming in, but stuff is going out so fast that it cannot sustain itself. A positive system sustains itself because what's going in is being properly managed and it's keeping the system working. A negative system, what is coming in, it's so mismanaged that more is leaving than is actually being utilized to sustain the system. And right now, what you got with corporate Uber drivers, and Uber customers is a negative system where stuff is going in, but because of the negative attitude of the customer expecting such cheap services, which leads to low cost of the mile, which leads to not being able to make enough money as a driver, and which leads to Uber being caught in little. I mean, California, I hate you as a state. You are a bunch of sucky liberals. You make an application, you know what you're going to get paid an hour, you know how many hours you're going to have to work, and you know if they're going to ask you to work extra hours, because they tell you. And then you get your first paycheck and you're upset, but you knew all the terms of the contract. That's why I have no sympathy for California Uber drivers, because the Uber partnership agreement is written in English and it's easy to read, easy to understand. And if you if you agree to the contract, then live by the contract. Otherwise, you're a slob. I'm going to stop here. There's people racing in the street. Nowadays, every crazy driver is like, they're going to jump out of their car with a rifle or a gun or swords. So that's the 3 issues. And the reason I was talking about the positive, negative loop, because the only thing that's at the end of that is the death of Uber. So it's the death of the income of those in corporate Uber, and that means the drivers will no longer have a platform to make money with, and the customer will no longer have Uber services to rely on. And you can rely on Lyft, but you want to have an alternative. And when you're burning out your alternatives, you're not helping yourself. And it's an interesting psychological study, a psychosocial study, because the modern human being is sick. I don't like going to Walmart because of the looks that I get from Walmart employees. If you have to tell, excuse me, if you need to look, if you need to give a dirty, judgmental look to a customer, you're a sick human being. I don't care what Walmarts think of me. I don't care if Walmarts don't like me because they think I'm white. I go to Walmart for one very simple reason. That's to spend my money there. We are living in a point in time where the human being, modern human being, is very sick. I wish I could. Let me see here. No, I cannot show you. The regular low life, neighborhood low life is like, and I'm sure people are saying, Christian, you shouldn't have that kind of an opinion of a human being. You don't know this person. He comes in from Mexico. He starts sticking himself to people, talking to them, and all he wants to do is beg for money. Right now, he's wiping down a truck with his little rag for money. And you could say, well, that's nothing big. No, he's part of the gang that breaks into apartments here in downtown El Paso. He's part of the gang that sells heroin, crack cocaine, marijuana. If you left your car parked on Oregon Street and you come back and your windows are broken out and you're missing a battery and a car stereo and whatever little items that you left inside your car is missing, this guy and the other members of the little gang were probably responsible for it. And that's the sign of the modern human being right there. These taxi drivers who don't respect their business, don't respect their customers, have convinced themselves that they're going to charge whatever the hell they want to charge, and so be it, and have put themselves out of business. That's a representation of the mental health of the modern human being. I remember when I was dating a woman, and this family was very good at looking down their noses at people. But the woman that I was dating would order office supplies because she worked in an office, but she would take those office supplies to her home for personal use. And then her and her family members would brag to me about the one member of their family that was supposedly hooked up with big-time drug dealers. And I'm like, why are these middle income people bragging about the family member who is hooked up with big time drug dealers? That's not something that they should be bragging about. And the woman that I was dating, and you learn to keep your mouth shut. I cannot succeed in a romantic relationship with a woman because when it comes time to speak, I won't. So, because you got to keep your mouth shut. Otherwise, you're going to incur the wrath. You're just going to incur the wrath, which is not going to lead to success. See? If I told these drivers off and told them how miserable they are, it's a fight. I've told this little lowlife off. He starts yelling, taxi. He has nothing to do with the taxi. That's my end. That's what gets me on him, on his case. If he starts yelling taxi, 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 and he has nothing to do with the taxi business. He sees a person with the luggage and he chases them, he takes off running, and I'm like, it was a heat sicking me. So, and I can see the look on the customer. They're scared. Like, who's this guy running at us? It's 3 a.m, it's dark, and who's this guy running at us, stretching out his hand, reaching for our luggage? And that makes me look bad because as he's running towards that customer, he's yelling taxi, 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 which makes it look like he's part of me, which is not. He makes my business look bad. So there it is. I've been at this for 20 years. I wasn't an angel. I probably lost more customers than I have won, but I learned, I grew up, I became mature. I realized the customer's the money. And it's better to generate, what did you used to call it, networking and something else. Keep the customer happy. The customer will keep coming back. The customer will speak well of you, recommend you to other people. And everybody, as far as I'm concerned, everybody's behaving like a slob. Corporate Uber is behaving like a slob. Uber drivers are behaving like slobs. And the Uber customers should be ashamed of themselves demanding such cheap service. But all three of them are going to contribute to the death of Uber, which makes me look good. You know, Spectrum Cable used to be Time Warner Cable. And they provided such bad service that they needed to leave the El Paso market, and Spectrum Cable came in.